Hi, thanks a lot for picking up one of our 7 mead tastings. So today, Will and I are going to be talking you through pretty much the range of what we do here at Gosnell, is that right?
Yeah, so we're going to be going through two main styles of mead, I guess, especially two main styles that we do. In the tasting bundle, you're going to get 4 cans of mead and 3 specialty meads.
So the 4 cans are the kind of core range, the ones we kind of make most of. So they're, I guess, a classic hydromel style, which is, I mean, there's thousands of different types of mead.
Yeah, even with that, you can go hydromel, session mead, sparkling mead. I think there's even a short mead, which is a term for a short aged or non-aged mead. But yeah.
Yeah. So there are 4 core meads, and then we've got 3 special things that we've knocked up in the brewery as well.
Yeah. So we do quite a lot of barrel program work here, and we do some high gravity sort of brews as well. So the first one of that will be the pineapple Kavik, which is a roasted pineapple and Kavik. Kavik is a traditional Norwegian ale yeast, so that's ferments super tropical, super high. It's got a high tolerance for alcohol. It produces some nice sort of tropical notes, and we just thought we'd put a little bit of roasted pineapple on the top of that and let that ferment out.
Cool.
And then the other 2 are barrel fermented and barrel aged meads. So they're both based on a traditional base. One's got plums and the other one's got mango and Scotch bonnet.
That's really exciting.
So yeah.
So should we open up the pack and
let's see what
we got?
So the first one you'll have is a little sheet, which will have a little descriptor about everything. It'll have where you can find this video, but you've already found it, so well done. On the other side, just a little bit of space just take some notes, or to sort of write down anything that you liked or disliked, or something you want to just take note of. But we'll probably
let's
jump straight in.
Well, let's open it up, right? So we've got the 4-pack of meads. That's our classic meads. Then we've got the 3 special meads, which come in the little bottles, and then we've got a few other bits and bobs. So we've got some honey. So what's cool about this kit is you get the honey that the meads have been made from.
Yeah, so you'll get 2 honeys. So one honey is the European blossom, which is what we base the cans on. So that's a poly blossom. So a blossom is a flower that produces fruit. So that's a blend of different blossoms, and then we also have a monoflora honey, the orange blossom, which is an orange blossom honey.
And then we've got some other bits and bobs. We've got a bit of info about us and the brand. We've got a seed bomb. So this is our helping out the bees, especially over winter.
So it's not a piece of chocolate, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. So if you plant this in your garden, a load of wildflowers will grow up to kind of...
Yeah, we did that outside the brewery, and over the summer it just went absolutely nuts. It's a beautiful little thing to see.
And a few coasters as well, just to brighten up your desk.
Oh, we might as well use these.
There we go. Right, so where should we start? Should we start with some honey?
I think we should start with some honey. So first off, we'll have a look at the orange blossom, the European blossom, sorry.
So what's really cool about mead and the mead we make is that depending on the different style of honey we use, or different type of honey, and depending on what the bees have been foraging for, you get a different flavour in the honey. And then when you ferment through the sugars, that kind of all gets accentuated, so you can get that bee to bottle flavour.
Yeah,
that's kind of what
and just like if you're new to mead as well, we should probably cover what mead is. So mead, like grape cider wine, honey is to mead. So it's just where you get your fermentable sugars from. So just like in wine, honey has a terroir. So depending on where the bees have been foraging, the weather, the soil that's growing, the flora, the different types of flora, you get a beautiful range of, or a beautiful expression of the area it comes from.
So this is a blossom honey, as we mentioned. It's a blend of different types of honey. And so what we do is we like to blend a load of honeys together so we get a consistent flavour. So year after year, depending on, obviously it varies depending on what the bees have been eating, we're trying to get a really consistent flavour so we can make our core meads out of them, and they taste the same each year.
Yeah, so let's have a bit of a go. So this is quite a, I wouldn't say a typical honey, it's still quite a really, really nice honey, but it's a nice sort of rounded sweetness. It's got a little bit of fruitiness to it, a little bit of that genuine honey character as well. It's quite a simple, complex honey, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it's a good base honey in which we like to layer a load of other flavours on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want from this honey, is to be able to have a honey that can stand up to lots of different adjuncts that come in. So if you're going to put a flavour over the top, then this honey is really good because you'll pull different parts out of it. So, if you put, like with the hibiscus, you put it in, you pull that nice honey character, but you also get a little bit of that sort of red fruity sort of character come through as well with that, and a little bit of that's from the honey as well. But then you put the hops in there and you get a little bit more of that apple sort of blossom that comes through in it as well.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And then the next honey we like to use, it's one of our favourite types of honey, is the orange blossom honey. This is actually the honey I used when I first started brewing to make our Gosnell for London, so the original. Now comes in those big 75cl bottles.
Yeah, so this one is a honey that you'll see a very big difference between the two. This one's got a roundy, little bit more musky sort of feel to it. It's got a higher acidity. There's a little bit of like citrus undertone, and sometimes that can be attributed to your mind just sort of looking for that. When it says orange on the side, you're looking for that citrus, but it's there. The acid profile is a little higher, and we like to use that. Well, it's more of a premium honey as well, so we really like to use that when we're trying to showcase the honey. So especially with these traditionals, or God, you call them melomels, or there's lots of names that you can go with that, and these names are usually historically driven as well. So like these can be called metheglins as well, which is anything that has a spice added to it or a flower. So the hibiscus or the hop would be classified as a metheglin, which comes from the Welsh term for medicine.
There you go. That's a Mead fact for you.
That is, and a lot of them get their names from these sort of historical things. Like a rhodomel is Greek for
rose.
It's like
rose hips, or
no, it's rose honey.
Oh, I don't know. Well,
yeah, I'll remember that in a minute.
Yeah, fair enough.
But,
so I think what's really cool about these two honeys, you can see the difference between them. So one of them, I like to describe as quite, so the orange blossom honey is quite a distinct kind of sharp flavour almost, and the other one's a bit more rounded. So you can kind of see how we're going to use that as we make our meads. So now's probably a good time, if you're not set up, get yourself a glass, make sure your meads are all chilled and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so remember, chill these ones. These ones you can serve at room temperature as well. Or you can serve them slightly chilled. I probably wouldn't put them in the freezer and have them super cold.
Yeah, you want them to
just a little bit to open up, and because they're oxidized as well during that fermentation process, because they're barrel fermented, having them open and get a bit of oxygen just help lift up that flavor profile as well.
Sure. So should we get into it?
Let's get into it. So I think we'll start with the hopped.
Yeah, I normally start with the hopped.
Yeah, the hopped is one that's a little bit more accessible to people in understanding what the flavour profile is going to be. If you've drank beer, you know what hops are like, and you know what the sort of flavour profile they give, a little bit of bitterness, a nice little bit of aromatic as well. So these ones are done with US Cascade hops.
Right, so quite big hops.
Quite big hops, not super tropical, but a little bit tropical. That's what the coasters are good for, because when you spill, you don't move it all around.
Well, try not to anyway.
But so the first thing you're going to sort of see is that beautiful colour. So we're looking at that first honey here, the European blossom, which is quite dark and yellow, and you're going to see just a little bit of that stick in the final product.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of head retention as well. Unlike beer, we don't have as much proteins in our mead as well, so we don't get as good head retention. So when you see that head drop, it's not flat, it's just how that sort of product settles out.
Sure, it's worth saying that the cans are obviously all carbonated, so it kind of helps to lift some of the flavours. They're 4%, so they're quite sessionable and quite easygoing. And that carbonation just adds to the mouthfeel, and the CO2 is actually a little bit acidic, so it kind of sharpens up some of the flavours.
Yeah. So the other thing too is, I get it all the time. Why do you shake your glass, or why do you roll it around? Sometimes you do it because you're adding a little bit of oxygen into it, or you're knocking out a little bit of that CO2 so you can lift some of those more volatile compounds up into
the aromatics kind of.
And you can get those into your nose.
So what does it taste like or smell like on the nose? Well,
so on the nose, the first thing I always get with our stuff, it's honey. So you're going to get honey at the forefront, and that's kind of the idea. But just behind that, those sort of secondary flavours start to kick in. There's a little bit of apple, I get a little bit of elderflower.
Yeah, I definitely get the elderflower coming through, and that's the kind of the flavours that people often mention is that elderflower.
Yeah, and it's again talking about it being hops. It's something that you've smelled before and you understand, and if you're doing these sort of tastings quite often, you get a little bit deeper, and when you start getting a bit deeper into this, you get a little slight citrus note. There's a little bit of There's a little bit of almost like grassiness in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a taste. Cheers.
Oh, I always forget how good that is. So, on the palate for me, it's, you obviously get that hit of kind of not sweetness, but like you definitely know there's some honey character coming through.
Yeah. So for me, the first part of palate is adjusting to that sweetness level.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always good to start with the hops because of the hops as well, you get a little bit of bitterness. So that kind of helps towards the end of the palate as it's also start to bitter out and get that little bit of tannin structure, a little bit of astringency at the end. But that middle palate, the acid seems to come through and just sort of lighten it up as well. And you get a nice sort of floral and sort of, I'd say grassy again.
Yeah, and elderflowery kind of notes.
This sort of
floral notes. Yeah,
and they sort of come through all the way through that palate, and then you got a nice sort of drying finish with the hops.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of short, sharp finish. I think it's nice and crisp and refreshing.
And you'll see that when we start comparing these cans together, even though they've got a very similar base, they really do differ past the first part of the palate.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the Citra, which we'll get to, a little bit salty at the front as well, but it's more salty at the finish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so enjoy, guys. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, obviously feel free to give us a pause whilst you enjoy this. Don't expect you to ramp through
that's it.
7 meads.
When you look at the video and you go, I've got to drink 7 meads in 25 minutes, you can. If you want to record that and send it to us, that's always fun. We do love a very intense short drinking session. Efficient, yeah, that's it.
So I normally go on to the Citra.
Yeah.
So these were actually they're formulated at the same time. So when we were looking to make the hops, this was a much more experimental recipe. I think the inspiration from Nick, who made it, your predecessor, was a goza. So taking inspiration from that. So
a goza, if you don't know, a goza is a sour beer, so a lactose sour beer with coriander, lemon peel, and hops.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've gone with here, except we've transferred the coriander for tarragon. So we're sort of brightened it up, and the tarragon gives you a little bit of anise, not over the top. As somebody who's quite sensitive to that sort of anise flavour profile, it's very well incorporated. And then the saltiness just gives it a nice, clean
sea salt
finish.
in it. You forgot that.
We did. So at the end, you got a little bit of sea salt. So the story when I started here that I really enjoyed was that Tom used to drive down to Cornwall, fill up an IBC full of seawater, bring it back.
It wasn't an IBC, it was a big jerry can, because the Clio can only take
I've
50
seen that
seawater.
Clio take a lot. It's
know.
a beautiful car. If you're looking for an old car, buy a Clio.
Anyway, so it was originally with seawater. Obviously, we scaled up the recipe, so we replaced it with sea salt. And we make
a little bit more consistency as well. And as you sort of start to like a recipe, you're always developing, and you never quite finish.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
More than welcome.
So I think this is the most complex of the cans in terms of the flavour. There's a lot of flavours layered on top of each other, and actually that's quite challenging to do well, to kind of get each of those elements to sing both together and individually.
Yeah, so when I talk about this with people, I remember when I first started brewing that I was told that not to use any more than 3 ingredients, stick to quite simple flavours, otherwise you don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And that's good for developing recipes, but once you've developed a recipe and then you start moving it along, you can really start getting used to it, and this is where this is at. So when you put your nose into it, Tom, what do you get?
Oh, it's richer than the first one. So I can get the tarragon coming through. I obviously know it's tarragon. It's not that familiar a smell or a flavour, but that for me is the predominant. A little bit grassy, a little bit anise, creamy almost. Like there's a richness to it.
And you can really smell the salt too. And I always have this sort of can you smell salt? And I'm like, well, you can smell the ocean, you can smell salt.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's got a little bit of that sort of character to it as well. We also use lemon peel in here as well, just to give it a little bit of citrus and a little
something to bite into.
Yeah, something to lighten it up with the acid profile.
This is definitely one of the ones that you want to have a couple of sips. It will open up. It's, as we said, it was quite complex, so you need to sort of bend your mind around it a little bit.
Yeah, especially after the hopped.
Yeah.
The hopped had a nice dry finish. This one, you're really picking up a little bit more of the sweetness. You can really get that I think it's a lemon peel that's giving it that sort of roundy creaminess to it as well. So just because we use not just the peel, we use a little bit of the pith as well.
Yeah, so you get some of those oils coming out.
Get some of those oils, and it gives it a nice rounded sort of feel to it as well. You get a nice little bit of hop character in there as well.
Yeah.
It helps dry out at the end, but then you can get hit with that beautiful salty finish at the end.
I know, that for me, that's what makes this exceptional, right? It's that salty, almost like, it's not like salted caramel, but in the same way that you use salt and salted caramel.
Yeah, so salt and sweet go together so well, you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, cheers.
That's tasting really good today. I kind of oscillate between which is my favourite, but sometimes you just taste it and go, oh, that's
That's
really
the beauty about the 4-pack, is that there's definitely one in there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So guys, this is probably another good time. Pause your video, finish off your drink, enjoy it, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, and if you've got any thoughts or questions, then either send us an Instagram or an email. Yeah, and we'd love to hear what people think about what we're doing.
We really do. It's the best sort of way to get feedback.
It does make my day when people send us an email. I had a lovely phone call from someone the other day.
Nice.
It's just really nice.
Well, this is it. When you actually give your number out to people and they use it, it's quite surprising,
Exactly.
you know. And it's usually you always think you're going to be scared of people just annoying you with stuff, but we only get great things come through.
Yeah,
so
which is nice.
all right.
Well, hopefully you've had a little bit of a pause. Where you can carry on. Where are we going next, Will?
So I think the next one that I usually like to go to is the sour. So let's crack open the sour.
Cool. So tell us about the sour, Will.
So-
How's this made and how's this different?
So the sour is my baby. This is a mixed fermentation mead. So mixed fermentation just means that it's using different yeast and bacteria. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is sour when you say mixed fermentation, but generally it is. So with this one we're using Saccharomyces, which is your normal brewers, or baking yeast. Then we're using Lactobacillus, which is what you'll find in yogurt and used to cure cheese. And then we also use Acetobacter, which you'll find in vinegar and in Belgian beers, which is where I sort of got the inspiration for this growing up. I loved Belgian beer. It was something so strange to me, that combination of acid profiles and the sourness that goes to it always struck me as something I always wanted to create.
Yeah, and I guess what's really cool is those three organisms form this kind of symbiotic relationship where they're kind of producing different compounds that they all kind of eat together. And
Yeah,
it's really
so-
unique mixed fermentation.
Yeah, so the fun side of that too is that Acetobacter converts alcohol into acetic acid. So you've got a different style of fermentation happening there as well. So that means you need to produce the alcohol using the Saccharomyces and that converts sugar to alcohol, and then you've got the Lactobacillus, which will convert sugar to lactic acid, and then you've got the Acetobacter that takes some of that alcohol and converts that over to acetic
So
acid.
what we do is we obviously essentially sour up a mead, don't we? So we make quite a sour base and we back it off with a sweeter mead, which is technically they use in Belgian beers as well.
Yeah, and this is what you'll find about this is it's a balance between sour and sweet. So it's not like your typical sour beer, which can be quite acidic and dry. This has got a nice balanced sweetness to it that really makes it unique.
Yeah, cool.
So let's have a go.
Oh, so on the nose you definitely get that acid profile, right?
Yeah, so you get a little bit of that sort of vinaigrette, that nice rounded sweet smell of the lacto as well. And you get nice yeast characters. We also use a little bit of tea in this as well, and that's just to give a little bit of nitrogen to our mixed fermentation. So with that there, you're going to get a little bit of this tannin structure and a little bit of roundness coming from the tea as well. Other than that, it's pretty much a straight mead. So you're looking at just how that bacteria works with the honey, which is really cool.
And then on the flavour, you get this. It's a little bit funky. Is not necessarily. It's not super funky. But there's a hint of funk in there. And then there's the acid, which is nicely foiled with the sweetness. And then for me, it just gets you salivating at the back of the mouth.
Yeah, and the tea allows it just to give that little bit of maltiness, that little bit of biscuit that you can kind of get in there, or bread. Some people associate it with. And that just gives it a nice full round feel to it as well, which is really, really cool.
It's really cool.
But this is definitely, we talked about it before, about having our favourites. This one's always my first or my second favourite. It takes a very long time to make, probably about 3 or 4 times as long as all the other cans, but
there we go, it's worth it. It's worth it. So guys, again, let us know what you think about that. And take a pause, take a breather if you like, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, enjoy.
Where are we going next then, Will?
Okay.
Well, go for the last can, the hibiscus, which is my personal favourite, the one that I like to drink in the shower.
Please tell me more. I haven't heard this story.
The world's split about shower beers.
Well, in Australia, it's always been a thing. It's not even a question of, oh, that's weird. It's just you're either a person who does it or you don't.
Yeah, so I'm a person who likes a really cold beverage in the shower. And this is my go-to beverage, especially at the moment. So it's the Hibiscus Meat, beautifully pink.
As you can see, yeah, and this one, talking a little bit more about not having proteins in our mead as well. The hibiscus itself actually gives a little bit of protein structure to this as well. That's why you get a little bit better head retention with the hibiscus versus the other 3 cans.
So this is made by essentially jamming the fermenter full of hibiscus flowers, so dried hibiscus flowers.
Which, if you've ever had dried hibiscus flowers, they're very tart, they're beautiful and fruity, and they're just a really cool thing to work with. And when we put our nose into it, we'll see all these fruits and these red fruit sort of flavours that come through, but there's nothing there but hibiscus, which is why I really love working with this, this ingredient.
Yeah, so on the nose I get blackcurrant, jam,
very
fruity,
jammy.
very jammy.
Yeah, I get a little bit of, little tiny bit of cranberry and a little bit of raspberry, these sort of like berry characteristics.
Red fruits,
these red fruits. Not so much red stone fruit, but more berry-esque.
It's a red stone fruit.
Would you call plum a red stone
I
fruit?
suppose you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's red on the outside,
It's
but
red on the
it's usually
outside.
got white flesh.
Anyway.
Oh, can you get...
We
Conversation for another time.
Yeah.
This is the beauty about drinking mead, is as you get further on, the conversation gets a little...
more fluid. Yeah, so and this is just gorgeous, right?
So on the palate, you really got to notice the level of sweetness drop, and that's not necessarily less sugar than the others or less residual honey than the others. It's more that acid profile from the hibiscus is really lifting that drink to be, perception of sweetness to drop.
Yeah, and I think what the hibiscus, there must be some tannic structure in this hibiscus flower.
Yeah.
Because you get that dryness at the end, which I always compare to, say, a cranberry juice.
Yeah.
That drying out, it's not dry, it's sweet, but then you get that dry finish, which is nice.
And it's really fun to sort of go through that, especially when you compare all the cans and how different they are based on their ingredients. This one's one of those ones where you're just like, wow, that's so diversely different to the rest, and it's only one ingredient.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
So
really
guys,
fun.
take another breather if you need it, and then we'll continue on with some of the small batch. What are you doing here?
I heard you guys are tasting some meat, so I wanted to join the party. We will be.
We will be. We've just finished tasting the 4 packs of mead, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. This is a bit of a segue into the second half, which is our more premium mead tastings.
Yeah, so we change them each month, and this is the next instalment. So make sure your glasses are clean, ready to go, and enjoy.
Let's get into it, James.
What's the first one we're going to tackle then?
So, we are going to look at doing the Hackney, James. I think we're going to start from the furthest away and work our way back.
That sounds great. I'm really excited.
So, the Hackney, James. Do you remember when we made this?
You know what? I think you might have made this just before I joined.
Oh, really?
Or if we did brew it, because we brewed this 2 years ago, or coming up to 2 years ago, and I'd have just joined, I think.
So what have we got here, James? We've got the Hackney. So this is part of our Mead of the Month program that we did last year. We took about 30 litres of that and we kept it off in a keg on the side and waited for the right time to bring this up. And the February tasting bundle was that. So without any further ado, it's made with honey from the Hackney Marshes. So it's just honey done in with our house yeast here. Similar fermentation to all our other Mead of the Months. Let's have a go, James. So straight away, because we've just had that there's just so much more going on in that. So this here is a little bit funky. There's some floral notes in there. There's definitely some fruit underneath.
Lots of pear.
Lots of pear. Yeah, pear, apple. There's even a little bit, maybe a little bit tropical now.
Yeah. It's definitely cleaned out quite a lot since we brewed it. For me it's very kind of citrusy and pear-like.
Yeah, it's 9% too. So this is one of the highest we've ever pushed our house yeast.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. Usually we stay around the 6-7%, but this time we decided to really go for it.
That is gorgeous. That's really good. Yes, it's pears, it's lemon, bit of fruit salad kind of as well.
Yeah, it's
and the alcohol's really, it's 9%, but it doesn't feel it.
Yeah, no,
it's warming,
I
but
remember
it's
when we
smooth.
first made it, it was a little bit more intense on the alcohol, but this is so much more subdued. The sugar, the balance is quite nice as well. Like, this is all right.
So we only brewed this on a 200 litre scale, and we sold most of it in bottles, didn't we? But we had enough we had a keg of it, enough to do some cans, and now I'm just thinking, I wish we'd just done this all in cans. It's
Nice. I do prefer the bigger bottles. I do prefer that sort of
the premium side of it.
It's more of a sharing and talking experience, but it's nice to be able to have the ability to then punch them out to people at home to try that more of our premium side of our mead making.
There's a lot of it's very reminiscent of Perry's and ciders.
Yeah, it's got that a bit with the booze behind it, and just probably a little bit bigger body. Usually when you punch up the ABV in, let's say, a Perry, it's usually quite dry, and there's been a lot of sort of sugar in that season to get the ABV up, because a lot of those like premium makers also don't want to be adding sugar to their Perrys or ciders, so they keep that ABV whatever that season's produced.
It's just amazing. It just goes to show how much honey can do.
Oh man, it's incredible.
All the colour, all the subtleties in the taste and aromas. Amazing. Well,
James, speaking of cider,
what a segue.
Let's move on to the second one in this, which is a collaboration that we did with Hawk Cidery up there in Bermondsey. Mm-hmm. This is done with a 2018 Dabinet, so, like we were just talking about, it was a hot season that year, tons of sugar. Some of the Dabinet even went up to 8-9%. And then we blended that with our hopped mead. We regulated it a little bit, took it down to 5.5%, put it into can, carbonated it, and here we are.
And we had a chat with Theo, didn't we? Not last week, the week before.
Yeah, such a lovely man. Like both Theo and Max there at Hawks are just incredible cider makers.
Really knowledgeable.
Incredible cider makers.
Really nice guys.
Just, have all the time in the world for them, and I can't wait to have another chat and do another collab with them. But before we get into that, let's get into this.
Yeah.
So first thing is I just get, compared to everything else, the apple is just so strong. Like we talked about the last one having some apple in there. This is like apple and honey together, like. The other thing that's quite different, especially when you start getting to the palate, is that tannin structure, and that dryiness that gets towards the end of the palate. It's just
and that all comes from the skins of the apples.
It comes from the skins of the apple, and that's kind of where you get a little bit of that tannin structure, and that's reduced. I remember the Dabinet on its own was quite intense and tannic, with also quite a bit of quite a bit of acid and quite a bit of funk on the nose as well. That West Country cider sort of feel to it as well, but mixed with our semi-sweet mead, you get a little bit of the hop character come through on the nose. You get a little bit of sweetness in the body, but then you get these nice sort of complex sort of apple characters that come out, and this is one of my favourite of our collabs.
It is very refreshing, and I have to agree as well. This is my favourite collab we've done so far.
Oh, I love it. I could drink that all day.
I know.
Sunshine, book in hand. This is kind of where I'd like to be, right? Oh. So, guys,
we need to do some more of these sizes for sure.
100%.
So, size is one of those crossover drinks. As kind of mead started falling out of favour in Europe, and you had more sort of cider coming through and more wine production. It was just one of those kind of crossover drinks where people were just using any sugars that fermented.
So just scream through it because we love this so much. But on the nose is a little bit of the hop character underneath. There's a little bit of like custard apple in there too.
Yeah.
And then it's drying on the nose. I know it's sort of weird to say that there's like a drying quality on the nose, but it just, I don't know, you can almost smell that.
You can almost smell the acidity. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. But
the best thing about this is that we do quite a few collabs, but it's really hard to get a nice marrying of the collab with the honey. We always struggle making, like a braggot or, which is half beer, half mead, and going dry, and you lose all the honey character, and you lose all the all the essence of the mead as well. When we do these sorts of things, we want to be showcasing the best of both worlds, and this collab, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head, James.
Yeah, I mean, I think honey is notoriously tricky to blend with other sugar sources and alcohol.
Well, that's it, because the yeast really loves to chew through that first.
Yeah,
it really likes to,
because it's such a simple form of sugar, isn't it?
That's it. And when you got things like in beer where you have maltose and maltodextrin and all these sort of things produced in that process, that's kind of what's left over, and that becomes a dominating sort of character. Thank you.
All right, ready for the next one?
And indeed, James.
God, I might have to buy one of these February tasting ones. Great.
So, James, I know you love this one. Talk to me.
So this is another one of our Mead of the Month. This is from our Mead of the Month program that we did last year. And this is, I think, number 8 in the lineup. So every month we did a different mead made out of a different type of honey that was either monofloral, so all the bees had gone to one specific plant to forage the nectar to make the honey, or it was single origin, so they foraged within a 3-mile radius, I think, in one area around in the UK. This particular one is heather. Now, heather honey is kind of notorious in the mead world, I guess, because it's really hard to extract for beekeepers. It's really full of proteins and wax, and it's really thick and viscous. And then the flavors that come through are a massive blend of like savory and sweet. This, as you know, is a massive what's the sweet?
Marzipan.
Massive marzipan bomb. It's a lot.
So yeah, I just put my nose into it, and like.
Before we get into this, do you remember brewing this?
Yeah, look, it was the only time that I've ever gone home, and I know I've told this story 100 times. It was the only time I've ever gone home from work, and my partner turned around and she was like, "You need to go and clean yourself because you stink like honey."
Everyone from the building came down today, and they were like, "What
are you making?"
Everything smells of honey.
It's so intense. It's musky. It's like boiled lollies and sweets and marzipan and grass and bog myrtle, and like it's just
crazy.
It's like English countryside on a wet day, mixed with that 2 weeks of summer that we get here. Like it's.
And when we receive that honey to brew with, it comes in like 15-litre buckets, and as we're pouring the water in, and we're getting a nice little whirlpool in to get some nice mixing going on, I'm opening these buckets, I'm tipping them upside down, and it's just coming down like.
like treacle.
It's even so slow.
Even slow. It looked like fudge.
Yeah.
Like not even like dripping caramel.
Yeah.
It looked like fudge.
Not liquid.
It was it was a long brew day.
It was.
So we decided to do this in a 2-stage fermentation as well. So we did this with our house yeast up to about 6%, and then we pitched a red wine yeast over the top just to push it up to that 10.5. And then we just kind of let it go until it couldn't go anymore, and it ended up at about 10.5% with a decent amount of sugar. So let's get into it.
Yeah, and straight away it's just marzipan.
So the funky.
But behind that, there's a little bit of kind of refreshing acidity there as well.
There's some boiled I know I said boiled lollies before, like boiled sweets, but there's also like some candied lemon peel sort of thing going on.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of I don't know how you'd say it, like have you ever been to Turkey, or have you travelled around that area at all?
No, not.
Or like there's just some kinds of sweets that you get in that part of the world, which are kind of a mix of savoury and like sometimes you get like candied fennel seeds.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That's quite popular
in
India.
Turkish delight, right?
Turkish delight as well, yeah. And
like rose petal used in that sort of process.
And that's what this reminds me of. It's obviously.
Yeah, I can get the Turkish delight, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of cool.
It's massively sweet, and but you get this kind of like herbal thing with it as well. I mean, I've only just picked up on the fennel.
Oh, and it goes to the palate, James. Big honey palate. Like, it's so complicated on the nose that you can be forgiven to think that it's not, a huge honey aroma on the nose. It gets to the palate and you're getting honey in the front of the palate. In the middle there, you're getting all these like spices and all this herbal character, a little bit of florality going on. and then it sort of starts to pan out, and then it's a little bit musky, and it's starting to get like a little complicated at the back, and you're getting this tannin structure, you're getting this like herbaceous sort of green feeling in the mouth. And I always attribute colours to flavours, but
it's quite bitter as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got this bitter note to it, but the sweet, it's this bittersweet. I love this, and when you buy the 750ml bottles, like we've sort of decanted those into these, but in the 750ml bottles, down the bottom is this, waxy, almost like protein-based sort of like floating middle at the bottom of the bottle that, on the right day, at the right temperature, kind of looks like rolling hills of protein, which is kind of cool.
Well, it used to be, heather honey used to be considered a food stuff. Because it was so full of like wax and fats and proteins and like other sort of natural organic compounds from the hives. I think it was the Pictou. I think it was the Pictou used to eat that as a
stuff,
high calorie honey.
Man,
sugar
and you can see
source.
it, like
yeah.
it's like no other honey that we've ever worked with. Like
you say, it's like spooning it. It's like fudge.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's no like dripping off the bottom. It's just. It's like picking up a spoonful of butter.
Yeah.
But last one, James, the botchet. Is it pronounced botchet?
I believe it's Bocket.
Bocket.
Boucher.
Yeah, it's the Boucher. Before we get there, I'm just going to get a rinse out on this, James, just because that last one is very, very intense. And I just want to clean it up and get that palate going. So let's move into it. And straight away you can see that colour, James. What gives it the colour?
So a Boucher, or Boucher, however you want to say it, is a mead where a portion of the honey used to brew it is caramelized. And obviously in that caramelization process, you're essentially cooking and burning the honey, so you get some decolorization, so it sort of goes dark, and then you mix that back in with the rest of your honey bill, and you get this gorgeous kind of this kind of brown, this
yeah, because some people make
sherry colour
where they do 100% of the honey and they caramelize it. And
some people do it 20%, but traditionally we've done it where it's a little bit more towards the 50-50 side, and that's worked really well. And you get some of those kind of roasted and like coffee and a bit more sort of bitter flavors.
Yeah, and then we barrel ferment with our Bouchers as well. Like we do a lot of barrel fermenting here, but not with everything. But the Boucher really lends itself to that micro-oxidization. We quite like 71B as a standard yeast. Like that's a very popular mead yeast for a reason. Like it works across things, but I think it really works well here. In that caramelization process, you're also making some more unfermentable sugars more fermentable, and you're also making some of the simple sugars unfermentable. So you're getting this nice little changeover of the sugars, which allows you to have a little bit more residual sweetness and a little bit more perception of sweetness as well with that caramelization. When you put your nose into it, you smell caramel and you smell coffee. It just has this and there's a little bit of fudge in there as well for me, but it just has the perception of sweetness as well that goes with it. This one we barrel aged for about 8-9 months, I think. It's 13% alcohol. Let's get into the nose, James.
Gotta say before I do that,
I love this.
This is the funnest brew day ever as well.
Yeah.
This basically what this involves is me putting about 50 kilos of honey into a kettle, taking it outside, putting it on top of an open fire barbecue, and then just burning, and then just cooking honey basically.
Taking little samples every 5 minutes and just watching that caramelization happen over an hour period, which is really cool, and then dialing in that process of going, okay, how much caramel do we want to go? We don't want to burn the caramel, or we don't want to burn the honey, and we don't want to under caramelize it either. So there's quite an art form in deciding when that honey is ready to be taken off and ready to go into that brew. But as you know as well, with that 50 kilos, like when you caramelize something, that expands something shocking. So if you're not watching it and you raise your heat too much, next thing you've just got this rush of boiling honey coming out of the pot, which
we know too well.
Yeah, we know too well. So now we use quite a big, tall pot and just don't allow that process to get too high. But there's no way of stopping it once it gets going.
And these Bouchers have just gotten better and better every time we brew them.
Yeah, this is probably the 4th or 5th iteration we've done.
Yeah, that's right.
And every one that we do is better than the last.
So, I mean, anyone who's trying this now, So some of the things that might come to your mind when you're drinking this is sherry.
Yeah.
And is it Madeira? Sweet Madeira?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got these and that's there's port as well, fortified wine. Anything that's barrel aged is going to have a similar sort of profile.
Yeah.
And just it's that mixing of oxygen with some of the compounds that create these sort of like nutty and some of these aromas that come out of that are just from that process.
Yeah.
So what are we getting on the nose, James?
Well, nutty is a really good word actually. That's
yeah, it's almost like toasted almonds, right?
Toasted almond character. A little bit of spice. We don't use any spice in the brew,
this
but
is
it's
just honey, and it's just another representation, another technique to work with the honeying, just to get a different profile out as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a sort of roasted, toasted flavour, I guess, going back to what you're saying with the nuts, but maybe a little bit more on the kind of going towards the coffee side, like a very sort of cold extract kind of coffee.
But then here's the palate. You got to remember, this is 13%. I know we had a little bit of drink, we slowly worked our way up in the percentage-wise, but the alcohol is so subtle, it's had time to calm down in the barrel. It hits your palate and it's like sweet at the front, but then it's quite acid driven. And then you get all the nice sort of at the back, all the nice caramel notes seem to come out and really give some complexity to this. And then all that barrel work just comes into play as well.
It's not just sugar and time. It's there's a lot of acid profile there, and there's not actually a lot of residual sugar left in this. It's just the perception is there, a bit like a sherry. It's kind of driven. It's quite refreshing.
So James, out of the 4, or out of the 8,
100% Boucher.
Boucher?
Go for it, yeah. I mean, I love all of them. Depends what you want it for, though. I think we did this in exactly the right order.
So let's do at home. It's November. It's raining. It's cold, and then it's the 5th of August. You've got a long weekend.
What day is the 5th of August?
Well, let's say it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Let's say it's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
But it's the first day of your 2 weeks of summer holidays.
I'm sitting down in a big armchair in front of an open fire.
November, I'm guessing, not...
No, this is November. Yeah. With a Boucher, and some kind of dog to my side.
Somebody's dog.
Just somebody's dog that I'm dog sitting for a while.
So the Boucher for that. Summer experience.
Sizer. I'm gonna have to go for the sizer.
See, I thought I'm with you. Like if I think of open fireplace, it's a real toss up between the Heather and the Boucher. But I'm probably going to go for the Boucher. I'm just so in love with that style and how tight they've got that. But then if it's me, first day of my holidays, summer, I'm actually going to go for the Hackney.
Yeah.
I quite, a little bit higher ABV, sugar levels right. The sizer, like deck chair, once I'm settled in, but just to go I'm on holiday, Hackney. So that's our tasting bundle.
Well, hopefully you've enjoyed that whistle-stop tour, or not so whistle-stop tour, through our meads. If you have any questions or you want to let us know what your favourite was, tag us in your photos. Everyone loves a bit of social.
Yeah.
And get in touch.
So guys, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.